from Castle Goring, from Nikki, Aurora, and from me. Well, today we are going to cover, by special request, a particular subject. So I'm going to read out 3 comments that really pretty much say what I should be doing. Claire Quinn says, "Please, Lady C, would love to hear your case study of Diana, Harry, and Meghan's relationships." Now, these are just 3 of many, many comments, okay? Kelly Catus says, or is it Calicatus? I'm not sure. "Hello, Lady C. Thank you for a great video, and I would like to hear your psychological case study. It would be fascinating, as I know on most subjects you think of things I would never have considered." Thank you for that. And Swamp Bunny, I love some of these names, says, "Please do a piece on the psychotic way she copies Diana. The photo shoot in Africa with the sunglasses in her shirt was the most unhinged, and I believe they weren't even together yet." Well, a girl can live in hope, can't she? Especially when she's aiming for the stars. Well, in fact, she's going beyond the stars. She's going into the galaxy, because she's not going to be bothering with any ordinary star. She's going to end up with royalty. But I don't want to oversimplify things, nor do I want to be anything but fair and dispassionate. So I think Meghan is like many narcissists, basically an empty vessel that is overlaid with all sorts of dimensions that she has observed will be successful. What people like Meghan do is, because they're basically emotionally empty and they don't really have proper emotional feelings, they may be sensationalists, but that's not the same thing as having emotions. So with a sensationalist, it's all super, oh, this is how I feel, I'm uncomfortable, I'm this, but not any deep, profound emotion. That is true of Meghan, that is true of Harry, and to an extent that was true of Diana. Each of them was basically, or had sensationalistic elements to their personality. Meghan obviously is very ambitious, and Meghan set out from the word go to be a star. She just wanted to be a star, and she would use whatever mask she felt worked well at that time to move her from A to C via B. And she tried out different techniques. Now, when she was growing up, she was a great admirer of Diana. She had Diana books. Several people have commented on the similarities between Meghan's present performance and the contents of my posthumous biography, The Real Diana. A lot of people think she has used that book as a case study. I mean, I haven't read it. Having written it, I would have read the proofs. I haven't read it since then, so I'm afraid I really don't even remember what it says. But people who have read it have made that point. Of course she was going to copy Diana. She admired Diana. Diana was a role model for her. And Diana was also going to give her the tools with which she could advance herself. So she took a lot of leaves out of Diana's book, but not only Diana's book, she took a lot of leaves out of a whole load of other people's books as well. And one minute she'd be a real toughie, and the next she'd be just so vulnerable. But then Diana was like that as well, actually. But she certainly copied Diana, and this is before she even met Harry. Now, she also, according to Meghan Kelly, who I don't think Meghan Kelly would be lying, she was told by a friend of Trevor Engelson's, who she knows, that Diana had a mood board with Harry on it. Was she plotting and scheming and planning? It's entirely possible. Or was she just creatively visualizing in the hope that it might manifest? I think that's more likely, because she did tell Lizzie Cundy that she wanted a rich, famous Englishman. And could Lizzie help to find her one? Because that's what she wanted. Well, she certainly lucked out in that department, because she got Harry, who, for all his shortcomings, was one of the most desirable bachelors on earth. If Meghan had studied Diana, which she clearly did, she would have had a tremendous amount of knowledge of what might and might not work with Diana's sons. Remember, she says that she was friendly with Princess Eugenie before. Now, I'm not saying that Princess Eugenie did anything untoward, but the fact of the matter is that Meghan is a crass opportunist. She is a frank operator, and she is the sort of person who she only needs to get one kernel of information to run with it and make sure that she maximizes it and brings it to fruition. Well, people like Meghan are extremely manipulative and devious, and they are also, Mickey's coming to say hello, they are extremely manipulative and devious, and they also know how to manipulate emotions in others and in themselves as well. Because by Meghan's own account, she is a self-hypnotist, and having hypnotized herself, she would then hypnotize Harry. Now, Diana was also very captivating, but Diana wasn't quite that calculating, fortunately. Diana was far more emotional and went with her feelings. But Meghan is, in my estimation, a cold, slick operator. She wanted a rich Englishman, preferably white, and she got one. But before that, she was very ambitious, and that's why she dumped Trevor Engelson. She jumped Trevor Engelson so that she would move up in the world, because as far as she was concerned, once she started mixing with the Trudeaus and the Mulroneys, as far as she was concerned, Trevor Engelson wasn't good enough for her. She also, of course, dumped her family, all branches of her family, not only the white branch, the black branch, with the exception of Uriah Heep. Oh, sorry, my mouth slipped. Doria, because Doria is very canny. Doria is very calculating, very calculated, very measured. The apple hasn't fallen far from that tree. Well, she wanted a rich Englishman. Why? Because she couldn't get a rich American. Because Meghan wasn't good looking enough, a big enough star. She wasn't captivating enough. She wanted an A or a B plus lister, and she knew that in America she wasn't going to get it. First of all, she was on the just about the right side of 40. So in fact, she was on the wrong side of coming up for middle age. And she knew that the sort of man that she could get wasn't good enough for her in America or Canada. And the sort of man that she wanted, she wouldn't be able to get. She wasn't well born enough. She wasn't good looking enough. She wasn't a big enough star. She had nothing to offer in terms of marital attractiveness. Either the man was going to be captivated by her offerings, because Meghan does have offerings, let's make no bones about it. She's very manipulative and very good at getting under people's skin and hooking men especially. But she's good at it with women as well. It's transactional, but she's very good at it. And when she turns on the charm, it's very charming. And she and Harry on some level genuinely clicked. And she realized that she could really play him very well, using all of the information she had about Diana, because it quickly became apparent to her, as it did to everybody who knew him, that he had a real mummy complex. He wanted to have a mummy that he could actually marry. That's what he wanted. He wanted his version of an idealized family life, which was very cool and laid back and involved absolute minimal work. And that's where Meghan was also giving Harry what he sort of wanted, because Harry didn't really want to be a full-time member of the royal family. He really wanted to be a part-time member of the royal family, mopping up all the benefits but really not putting in all that was required to maintain the order of a dutiful way of life. Well, Meghan presented herself to Harry as a version of his mother. Harry has often commented, both publicly and privately, how much Meghan reminds him of Diana. She deliberately dresses to flick that light switch, which she does, and which he likes. There is a very, in my opinion, sick element to their relationship, because they're both quite clear about the fact that he's sleeping with his mother. He's married to his mother, or a version of his mother. That's actually really, on some level, psychologically dubious. And it certainly means that she has a tremendous hold over him. But this is a hold that he has given her. She took it, she set out to achieve it, but he also gave it to her. So the fact that she set out to achieve it doesn't mean that he didn't meet her halfway, because he not only met her halfway, he met her more than halfway. None of his other girlfriends, or the girls he went out with, ever played upon that Diana issue, let's put it that way. That was the secret of Meghan's success with Harry. In much the same way that Wallis's dominating personality and Wallis's disregard for David's rank as Prince of Wales, then King of the United Kingdom, and treating him as if he were really an inferior to her, that thrilled him. Well, this thrilled Harry. And Meghan clearly sussed out what he needed. I understand that she is extremely adept at reading people's vulnerabilities and then utilizing them to her advantage. And she did that. Ironically enough, Diana did a similar thing with Charles. If you listened to Diana's own account of how she came to make a connection with Charles, you see the deviousness and the cleverness and the manipulation, but you also see the quite brilliant instinctiveness of somebody who may not have been academically gifted, but in terms of reading people and getting what she wanted out of them, absolutely brilliant. Because Diana, by her own account, met Charles as an adult, because she knew him but there was a big age gap. But she was born on the Sandringham estate. She knew Prince Andrew and Prince Edward. They used to go to each other's birthday parties. So she knew them from she was a child, but she didn't really know Charles or Anne until she re-met him at a distant cousin of mine, Robert de Pars's barbecue in Uckfield, Sussex. And she saw Charles sitting on a bale of hay and went over to him, and she pressed the absolutely right button, because Charles loves being cosseted and being sympathized with. And she said, "Oh, my heart went out to you when I saw you at Lord Mountbatten's funeral." Well, Geronimo. Meghan did a similar thing. Meghan even wore the same scent that Diana wore, evoking Diana to Harry. He wanted a mummy, and he's got a mummy. Harry basically would be, you could put him in the category of beach bum. He would be perfectly happy smoking grass and playing with his children all day, and only occasionally being trotted out to do something that would feed his royal status and monumental ego. Meghan is more of a go-getter. She, in many ways, is the man in the relationship and he's the woman. But she, of course, pretends that she's so feminine and delicate and wavers between that and being Boadicea, the ball-breaking, rock-hard go-getter. So she wavers between the two, and it thrills him, or thrilled him, I should say, thrilled. And again, Diana had a very masculine streak in her personality as well. Look at the way she used to walk, and look at the way she used to jump out of vehicles and go to meet people extremely assertively, almost masculinely assertively. So there's that as well. But my understanding is as well that Harry is very physical, Meghan is very physical, Diana was very physical. Diana and Harry were into exercise, sport, that's so. Meghan is not really into sport. Meghan is into yoga and that sort of thing, but they're all very physical. And my understanding is that Meghan hooked Harry very quickly with the juices, let's put it that way. She knew exactly what buttons to press to get him coming and going, and coming again before going again. And that played a big part in their relationship. Well, that used to play a big part in Diana's relationships. Now, I don't think we need to stretch that point too far beyond saying that a man who wants to replicate his mother in his wife definitely has mummy issues. I mean, it's so Oedipal, it's frightening. I am told that I made some notes, I should refer to them. I'm told that there is some doubt as to the extent to which Meghan is sincerely sensual, or whether she simply uses the projection of pleasure to seduce and subdue the man she wants to subdue and seduce. That's a fairly common form of feminine control and domination over men. I saw it with my own parents, And my mother used to say things to my sisters and me, which used to make our hair stand on end. So I I do think it's a lot more common in certain personality types than you might believe. I got that information from, shall we say, a collaborator of Meghan's with past knowledge of her performance, who now suspects that she is a lot less engaged sensationally than she appears to be within the moment, but she gives off all the right sounds and all the bells and whistles are blowing and squeaking and squawking. And that helps to captivate. She evidently is a great seducer. Diana was very seductive as well. So when Harry says that there are many similarities between Meghan and his mother, I don't only think that some of them are manufactured, I think some of them are genuine. I think Meghan has manufactured a lot of them. The way she dresses, the statements she makes about, oh, my heart bleeds for the poor, as long as you keep them in their place. Well, Diana wasn't like that. But Meghan is. But Harry only picks up what she's saying. He doesn't pick up anything else. Because my understanding from many sources is that Meghan has two distinct personalities. When Harry is around, usually, of course, she's not been able to maintain this farce indefinitely, but so the mask has slipped to an extent, but she still does it. She is in full Diana mode. Oh, soft and sweet. You notice sometimes how she speaks like this, which was how Diana used to speak like. Diana could be very soft and imploring, and Meghan does that as well. She never used to do it, but she does it now. She also makes herself out to be a lot nicer than she is when Harry isn't around. The very first person who gave me a clue to this was Thomas Markle Sr., who said that when he was on the phone to Meghan while in the run-up to the engagement and then in the run-up to the marriage, because she cut off her father just before the marriage, but until then she and he were in pretty close touch. And he noticed that when Harry was obviously in the room with her, because they'd be speaking on the phone, or Harry was nearby, oh, Daddy, I just think, oh, Daddy. And as soon as Harry was out of the room, and now, Daddy, total volte-face, total different face, total, complete about turn. She still, to an extent, evidently does that with Harry. So when Harry says he doesn't believe some of the things that are told to him about her, and he thinks people are being mean and nasty, it's because he doesn't see what you and I and everybody else see. He doesn't see that. Now, I have to say, I observed that with my parents as well. I nearly fell off my chair once when my father, towards the end of his life, when we were having end-of-life conversations, said to me, we were talking about various family things, which I won't go into. And then he said about Mummy, that because I'd asked him if he regretted having married Mummy. And he gave me a very fulsome answer. And then he said, but she's always been very loyal. I could have fallen off my chair. Mummy was the most disloyal individual. The things she used to say about him behind his back, the things she used to tell us about him, the willful way she went about undermining him, and she would doubtless have leapt if she was sure that she was going to leap to something better. The problem is, better never came along. And that is the situation with Meghan and Harry at the moment. So I can see, because I've seen it with my own parents, where the man is duped into thinking that the wife is something that she's not, and he's duped by the wife. But to an extent, some of it is willful blindness as well, because Daddy had ample opportunity to add up 2 and 2 and come up with 4 in terms of Mummy's treatment of other people. But he was so self-centered that he only basically counted what she did with him and discounted everything else with everybody else. And Harry does the same thing, which is very interesting. So she has a hold over him that is in part fictive. The whole thing is just a fiction. Well, Harry, Meghan, and Diana all possess one overriding characteristic: extreme romanticism. Meghan, for all her callous, cold, heartless calculatedness, is also a romantic. That's why everything's got to be bigger and better, and she's greedy, and she's greedy for love, and she's greedy for attention, and she's greedy for money, and she's greedy for recognition and approbation. But there is an extremely childish, romantic aspect to it. That's why she takes such great pleasure and pride in being Shira, the warrior princess, and doesn't realize that she is shooting herself in the foot constantly. Diana was also very romantic and very rebellious, and so is Harry. Now, Diana and Harry had very volatile personalities. Meghan is a volatile personality who suppresses a lot of it when it suits her to do so, but then lets rip otherwise. Do you begin to see how very well they fit? Of course, she has also created this Diana Mach 2 persona to hook Harry, to keep Harry. She is playing the greatest role of her life. Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, royalty. Harry is the vehicle, and he is the audience. But she can't do it without a vehicle, and she can't do it without an audience. But she's doing it. Diana had many of the same characteristics. Diana and Meghan both are dominatrixes, both of them. I mean, okay, Diana is dead, but I can't say Diana was and Meghan is, so we're just going to stick to the present. Diana's big mistake with Charles was in deciding she loved him madly, passionately, and totally, but then wanted to change him totally. She made him give up his friends, she made him change his hairstyle, she made him give up his clothes, she made him give up his dog, she made him give up his Stephen Barry, who was his valet, long-standing valet. She made him give up everything until when she was pregnant with Harry, he realized if he continued at that rate, he would cease to exist as an individual, at which point he did the healthy thing and pulled back. Meghan has done the exact same thing with Harry. Charles and Diana's relationship fractured when Harry was born. Harry's birth was the death knell of their relationship. It had started to fracture before, but it fractured thereafter. So Harry has grown up with all sorts of emotional subtexts going on, pulling and pushing, and Meghan does the same thing. So it's very comfortable for him. Meghan plays a very interesting game of variable reinforcement, which Diana used to do as well. Diana would blow hot and cold. She'd be all over someone, and then they did something she didn't like, or they didn't do something that she wanted them to do, or then she just got bored and they'd be out or they'd be downgraded. Meghan plays similar games. Harry is used to all of this. That's why he is so comfortable with it. And Harry genuinely believed that Meghan loved him because he genuinely loved Meghan. And he would find it totally devastating if he admitted to himself that she doesn't love him, she's never loved him. Oh, he gets fed up. But by and large, the basic structure, the basic walls of the prison, let's rephrase it, the basic walls of the prison have been erected, and Harry is very much in that prison. What Diana did with Charles and what Meghan has done with Harry, some people would call coercive control. But I would have said there was a huge difference between the outcome of Meghan and Harry's marriage and Charles and Diana's, because Charles withdrew to preserve his identity. Harry surrendered his identity. So at first Charles went along with it. And of course, the patina of that remained, and so did the pattern of it. So Harry, even though after Harry came along, his parents' marriage was in many ways over, superficially it kept on ticking over. And the habits and the way they related to each other had been established. And so Charles would duck and dive, and Diana would explode, and she would be nagging, and he would retreat. Harry retreats at the first sign of trouble. evidently. Meghan then gives full rein to her true personality as opposed to her Diana. Oh, I'm so soft and sweet and I'm a real humanitarian and I've got to think about you. And Diana wasn't that thoughtful either, let me tell you. Oh, she could be thoughtful, but Diana was really primarily about Diana, as indeed are many people. So I'm not saying that as a criticism, but Diana was not particularly self-sacrificing, nor is Meghan, nor Harry. On one level, yet on another level, he has sold himself out totally. To keep the marriage intact and to make it work, and it did work for quite a long time on many levels, and it works on one or two levels still. Harry sold himself out. He sold his family out. He sold his friends out. He sold his country out. He sold his royal status out. He sold out absolutely everything so that she would have the life she wanted and he would be the spare wheel. Coercive control, when it is collusive, is still coercive control. It's unhealthy. But as long as both parties are going along with it, it's actually sadomasochism, in my view. Or to rephrase it, it has strong sadomasochistic elements. Because somebody really has to have little or no self-respect to keep on selling themselves out. I'm told she plays a mean game of variable reinforcement. I'm going to read some of the notes I took. 1 minute, she's a vulnerable little woman who needs the protection of her big man, the prince. The next minute, she who must be obeyed, while he wavers between requiring the need to love and be loved by mummy and the chilling effect of being frozen out in Siberia as he returns to the emotional tundra which replicates his childhood experience. That's how I wrote down what they were saying. That was my understanding of what they were saying. Harry was often second best with Diana. She used to turn him over to the nannies because he could be so difficult and really unmanageable, impossible to control. And he would act up and embarrass her in public. And she wasn't prepared to put up with it. So she would leave him at home and take William, because William never behaved like that. Well, Harry is used to being relegated. And my understanding is that Harry relegates himself at the first hint that the temperature is changing. He relegates himself to Siberia. But he's happy to do it because he's basically a beach bum. And he's happy to opt out as long as Meghan will stroke him sufficiently to keep his fur smooth. Let's put it like that. There's another element to the relationship. Harry allowed Meghan to think that he was bigger, more powerful, and of greater significance than he was. So he really, on some level, deceived her. Now, of course, many people sort of keep things in reserve, so to speak. So I'm not saying that it's a terrible, terrible thing that he did, because she had eyes, she had ears, she's a university educated woman. She has enough common sense, one hopes, certainly enough brain power in the trained sense of the brain being something that you can actually, like a slot machine, put in the dime, you should get out something, ultimately a reward. She should have picked up on that, but she didn't, because she is self-important and she wanted to believe that he was giving her the keys not to Buckingham Palace but to Fort Knox as well. And she ignored all the evidence to the contrary. She ignored the fact that she was entering effectively a troupe of performers where her role was already scripted, and whoever was cast in it was going to have to go along with the choreography, failing which they could not participate in the show. Now, Harry led her to believe that they could actually change things sufficiently. But to what extent, I don't think he was the initiator of that. She was the initiator of that. So, because Harry was desperate to keep her and to keep her happy, which meant the same thing, because Meghan is evidently the sort of woman that if she's not happy, she makes your life absolute hell. And he wanted to keep her happy because he is hooked on her, or was hooked on her. I think to an extent he still is. And that doesn't mean that he doesn't at times see, to an extent, what's going on. But to the extent of withdrawal, addicts don't usually withdraw from the source of their addiction. I'm going to read out what it is. Harry has always played the big and more powerful man than he is or ever was. He really duped Meghan into thinking that she was getting a bigger and a better deal than she was. This boosted Meghan's expectations. Now, I'm going to interject here and then I'll return to my notes. That doesn't mean that Meghan would not have stuck with Harry. She saw that she had a fantastic deal and she wasn't going to get better, and indeed did better exist. She didn't think so. She obviously thought he was richer and had more access to things than he does. But still, the second son of the King of the United Kingdom, who was this heir in line to the throne, was definitely going to be better than most of the other men that she could conceivably get, and was better than any other man she had ever got. I mean, let's remember who she'd had, aside from the dates, let's put it like that, the dates that she had. She had Cory Vitiello, a celebrity chef in Toronto, not exactly the hub of the universe. Trevor Engelson, nice guy, very decent person, rarely evidently a capital guy, but an A-lister? No. Meghan was decidedly C or D list in every way, shape and form. Harry was indubitably A-list. So I think to an extent, the fact that she allowed herself to think that he, and went along with the fiction, she wanted to go along with it because she wanted to capitalize upon it so that she could ultimately use it to her advantage. So I don't want to give her that cop-out. But he did lead her to believe that he was bigger and better than he was. So that boosted Meghan's expectations, which meant that she had an inflated opinion of his worth from the outset. She still does, despite all the evidence to the contrary. She doesn't want to accept that their lack of importance is due to his never having had the stature he pretended. So she, and now as a result of her doing it, they both blame it on the royal family's meanness, envy of them, jealousy of their popularity. They clearly don't read the Hollywood Reporter or Vanity Fair, or even Page 6. Anything to explain away the fact that they are both trapped by their own exaggerated assessment of the worth of their positions as members of the royal family. This has parallels with Diana, because Diana overestimated her importance and her popularity and suffered a huge loss in stature after making the mistake of doing the Martin Bashir interview. So there are parallels here. But we don't need to stretch them beyond the fact that each of the three of them has one of their life lessons has to be coming to terms with the true level of their importance. Meghan and Harry are both prone to grandiosity. And that means they continue to trap themselves in the web of their own false creation. Neither one accepts that their resentment and bitterness stems not from being deprived of their rightful rewards, but from the fact that they have inflated their entitlements, which means that they are personally responsible for a lot of the problems which have been created by their own overblown expectations. That is not to say that Meghan and Harry, like all royals, whether they are displaced or not, or semi-detached or not, don't have extraordinary privileges. Even displaced royals like Meghan and Harry, if they are a part of a reigning royal family, do have privileges. Even deposed royals have privileges. Fewer, but they have them. Meghan and Harry's problem is they have an inability to differentiate between privileges and the rights that they actually possess, which are considerably fewer than what they think. And this has created arenas for hostility and resentment, which really shouldn't be there at all. And they wouldn't be there if they had a more realistic handle on their roles, both with regard to their relative importance and their relative unimportance. The dynamic of their relationship is overlaid in many ways by her hijacking aspects of his mother's identity and replicating those aspects, I think partly to control him and partly to make herself more attractive than she would otherwise have been to him. Meghan is one of those women who has functioned always on the basis of the fact that she sees a guy, she very quickly sizes him up, as her father used to say. She would see a guy across the room and she'd say, that is going to be my next boyfriend. And it invariably was. That means she has laser vision in terms of whom she can conquer and whom she can't conquer. There is a strong element of conquest about all of this. And that again was Diana. Diana was a conqueror. It's really interesting because Charles was the man in the relationship. And ultimately, he refused to allow Diana to convert him into the supplicant, or really what in psychological terms they would call the woman in the relationship. Harry has allowed Meghan to do that to him. So Charles got out by leaving. Harry can't get out without huge problems. I mean, Charles had huge problems as well, but Charles clearly had a greater sense of self-preservation than Harry. But Charles is a more intelligent person than Harry. He's also a more solid and sound person than Harry. And so they're not the same people. And the interesting thing is that Charles hasn't really had much of an effect upon their relationship, or their being Harry and Meghan's, or indeed upon Harry's life. But Diana has had a huge impact, possibly because, I would have said largely because, she died 2 weeks short of Harry's 13th birthday. That made a huge problem. That created a huge gap that he needed to be filled. But other royals have had similar situations. Queen Mary was a very cold mother in some ways, but could be very warm and engaging in others. And she could be great fun when King George V wasn't around. And David, who the Prince of Wales, who became Edward VIII, who then became the Duke of Windsor, he had huge mummy issues. He was a real mummy's boy until, of course, he debunked and married Wallis. But then he had a wife who dominated him, which is what he wanted. And she really took care of him the way you take care of your puppy or your child. There's that element to the Harry and Meghan relationship as well. I think a part of it is that a lot of the Hanoverians have a streak of over-limerence. They fall too deeply in love. Queen Victoria did it. Several of her uncles did it. The Duke of Windsor did it. George the Fourth certainly fell in love but didn't overdo it. Harry has done it. Charles ended up doing it with Camilla. Not the first or second time around, the third time around. But Camilla earned her spurs, because when Diana set out to destroy Charles's life and prevent him from acceding to the throne and making him as unpopular as she could, Camilla is the one who would give him the comfort that he needed in his distress at his life unraveling the way it was unraveling. Meghan has that same ruthless, vengeful streak that Diana had. Harry grew up with it. He witnessed his mother doing it time and again with people. He witnessed his mother all over a member of staff like Arash, then turning. She did it with several members of staff. She did it with several friends. She did it with several members of her own family, including her own mother. Harry saw all of that. Do you see why, on some level, he's comfortable not only with Meghan's cosplaying of Diana and her invented similarities, but the genuine similarities that coincide with her failings and Diana's failings? Quite an interesting relationship, very psychologically interesting. So on that note, I'll say I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in on other subjects as well, on any subject. If I can manage it, I am going to be delighted to manage it. I am very happy to broaden my horizons. So if you would like to broaden yours, please feel free to do so. And I hope this has been of some interest to you. And do let me know what you thought. Okay, thank you so much. Take good care. Godspeed. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care. Bye-bye.